Good morning. Welcome back to Planet Doug Behind the Scenes for Tuesday, March 5th, 2024. And if you are sharp-eyed, you might notice that the look is different from my previous behind the scenes because I've had the pleasure and the adventure of moving into a different hotel. Still in Port Dickson, I basically moved from the Seafront Hotel to a hotel that is downtown because I was starting to feel the isolation of being at the seafront when I don't have any transportation. I wanted to be downtown because I have a few things I need to do that involve stores and shops and things like that. So I looked around for a new place to stay, and Port Dickson is based on beach resorts. So most people who come here for a vacation, they're not even staying in Port Dickson. They're staying out on the highway, the stretches of long beaches, and all the resorts are out there. But there are a couple of relatively low budget style hotels inside Port Dickson town itself, and I moved to one of them called, it's a little bit confused, the whole place is kind of confusing, which is why I want to tell the story. Even the name is not entirely clear to me, but it is called the Marvel Suite Airbnb. So it's a combination of elements. I don't really understand why is it a suite, because it's basically a low budget hotel with quite small rooms. Where are the suites? I don't understand why it's a suite. And Airbnb, I guess I understand that, and more about that in a minute. But then they have other listings. I've seen it listed as Marvel Bungalow or something like that, where you're trying to choose your room and they give you the option of a bungalow. So I thought, oh, that must be a different location on the beaches where they actually have separate bungalows on the beach. But when you read the reviews of that place, a very common negative review is that there are no bungalows. They reserved and paid for a bungalow, assuming they would get a bungalow, but all they got was a room just like I'm staying in. So apparently even though it looks like two different places, it's the same place, but they call them suites on one listing and bungalows on another, but neither is accurate. So it's a bit of an unusual place. And it's even more unusual because, as I discovered, I didn't realize this at the beginning when I booked it, it's self-check-in. There's nobody here. So it doesn't operate like a normal hotel where you go to the front of the hotel, open the door, go into the lobby, talk to the front desk clerk and check in. It is completely self-check-in. And that led to a problem for me at the beginning because I couldn't find the place. Before I booked it, I wanted to know about its location because, as I said, I was confused. I didn't know whether it was a hotel inside the town or bungalows on the beach. So I had to figure that out first. So I looked for their Google Maps pin, and then I went down to Google Street View just so I could look up and down the street and see, is the hotel really there? And when I did that, there was nothing there. I know this part of Port Dickson quite well. I've ridden my bike up and down this street dozens of times, I'm pretty sure, and I never remembered seeing a hotel of any kind. Had I seen one, I would have dropped in to take a look at it, but I never passed a hotel, so I wasn't clear about whether it even existed. And then when I went down to Google Maps Street View, examining in detail every shop front where the Google Maps pin is located, there were no hotels of any kind. So I wanted to confirm this, and I got their WhatsApp number, and I sent a message to the hotel telling them I'd like to stay at Marvel, but I'm not clear about its location. I found its Google Maps pin. Is it there or not? I don't see anything. And we had one of those weird WhatsApp exchanges that I have all the time with businesses and with people, where the person I'm talking with is very unfocused. I can't get them to focus on what it is we're talking about. It's a rambling discourse of various bits of information, much of it unrelated, and I never understand why that happens. It felt like I was asking for something very specific. And eventually I got them to say that is where it is. And I suggested to them that, well, maybe the Google Maps Street View image is outdated, and that's why it doesn't show up. And they wrote back and said that, oh, that's probably what it is. And then the conversation ended there. And then when I came to the hotel, everything became clear, because as a self-check-in operation, there is no signage. The building does have this big open window at the front. If it was a real hotel, it would have big windows. You could see into the front lobby. There'd be a big sign. But because it's self-check-in, they rolled the steel shutters down and everything is covered. It looks like an abandoned, boarded up building. Plus, it's not where the Google pin is located. This also drives me crazy. The pin is across the corner. So there's a main street and there's another street, and the pin says it's here, but in fact the hotel is located on the other side of this street, not kitty corner, but on the other corner on the other side. And I guess maybe things like that don't make a big difference to local people. They're not using Google Maps to locate things the same way perhaps a foreigner is using it. But I like it when my Google Maps pin is precise. Otherwise, what's the point of it? And I do, every time I run into one of these situations, I do think about that what 3 words website. I used to talk about this all the time because I find the idea so fascinating that you can pinpoint an exact location on the planet with a 3-word code. And in this situation, it would have been so useful if Marvel customer service could say to me about the Google Maps pin, well, ignore that, locate it using this 3-word code, and that's where the hotel is exactly. They can define it precisely with what 3 words to the meter, and it will be perfect and exact. So it would be very handy to do, and you don't have to send a pin, you don't have to send a link, you just have to send the 3 words to identify the physical location. But also in this case, I'm a little bit disappointed. I'm all about customer service, and I come at these situations from the point of view, if I were on the other end of the phone, on the other end of the WhatsApp conversation, I were the customer service rep, what would I do? And I always conclude that I would do a lot more than this person did. So I was a customer contacting them and saying, I don't know where you are. I would make sure by the end of our conversation that customer knew exactly where we were. That customer was sending me screenshots of Google Maps Street View and saying, there's no hotel in this picture, where are you? I would send that customer a photograph of the street with arrows pointing to the hotel's location. But this customer service rep just said, no, the Google Maps pin is correct. And that's all they said. And then it turns out that they were wrong. The Google Maps pin is not correct. And again, as the customer service rep, if I became aware that the Google Maps pin was wrong, I would set about fixing it and making sure it gets moved to the right location. But I'm 100% sure that that is not going to happen. No one connected with Marvel is going to try to do this or worry about it in any way. I had one conversation in my life with a business I was trying to locate, and I couldn't find it because their Google Maps pin was wrong. And when I finally found, it was a coffee shop in Mesot, and when I went there, I spoke to someone who was in charge, and I told them my story about how the Google Maps pin made it difficult for me to find their place, and they fixed it. A few days later, they made sure, I just said, that they made sure that the Google Maps pin was corrected. That's the only time it's ever happened that I'm aware of. I was very impressed with them because of that. Continuing on with the story about the self-check-in, by the time I had booked the room and was packing up at Seafront and coming here, I had figured out that it was self-check-in. I talked about that with the customer service rep, and I wasn't very happy about the way everything was turning out, because moving into this hotel was my version of just trying to make my life simpler and easier and suddenly be in a town with shops. I wanted life to become freer and easier, but now I was faced with this confusing hotel that I still wasn't 100% sure where it was, and now they were saying that they will send me a code at 2:30, around 2:30, because it turns out check-in time was at 3, and I wasn't happy about that either. I hate late check-in times. I prefer 2. Even 2 is too late for me. Quite often in places like Sumatra, where I'm staying in these low-budget hotels, of course, I would often show up very early. I check out of one hotel at noon, and I walk across the street to the next hotel, so I'm there in their lobby at 12:05 or 12:15, and I know it's 2 hours early for check-in, but they always generally make an exception where they say, well, the room is ready, you're here. They don't even mention it. I show up at noon for a 2 p.m. check-in time. They just let me check in at noon. They let me check in whenever I show up, and I'm happy about that. And yeah, so that's what I like. But here, because it's self-check-in, there's no human being in the lobby who can make an exception for you. You are controlled by the computer systems, and the computer system is going to send you the code for the front door when they are ready to send you the code. There is a check-in procedure now, and it's being run by a computer system, or at least by an email or some kind of a message that has to be sent to you. Therefore, no exceptions can be made. So both of those factors kind of bothered me, and I assumed I would just be coming into town, and then I would be hanging out in a coffee shop until 3 o'clock when I can check into the hotel. And I set off on foot. It's about 2.5, maybe 2.5 kilometers from the seafront to downtown Port Dickson. And I have a backpack, so it's no big deal. I just walked into town, and the first thing I did was come directly to where I thought the hotel was located, because I wanted to know that right away. I didn't want to wait for 3 hours and then find out the hotel isn't even here, that it's 2 kilometers away up the highway. So I walked directly to the Google Maps pin, and that's when everything became clear. One is that the Google Maps pin was not in the right location. It was about, 200 feet away, something like that. And then I found a single metal door. It looked like a door that you would have at an illegal grow house or something. It looks secure, like this metal barrier has been designed to stand up to battering rams and gunfire and things like that. And then it has a metal latching system and then a keypad. But it did say on the door in big black, I believe black letters, Marvel. But that's all it said, just Marvel. The average person would have no idea that there was a hotel there. You could go by that thing 1,000 times. You would never know that there was any kind of a hotel at that location. Just a metal door, looks like the door into a prison that has the word Marvel on it. But I did find it, so I was happy that it did exist. Now all I needed to do was wait for the code, so I can put the code into the door, into the reader, and open the door and go in. After that, I didn't know what would happen. I just assumed things would start to make sense about the self-check-in procedure. So I'm standing there, and as I often do, I started taking pictures, because I thought maybe I would talk about this in a BTS video, maybe I would make a community tab post on YouTube. So I took a picture of the door, I walked across the street, and I took a picture of the whole street in different directions, just so I could establish exactly where this place is located in terms of photographs. I was doing all the things that customer service should have been doing. I was their guest and I was the one doing it. So I'm standing there taking a picture of the door. I've got my smartphone out, and then a young man came up to me and he said, "Oh, are you staying here? Are you checking in?" And I had no idea who he was. I assumed he was another guest. And I was thinking, this could work to my favor, that at the very least, this guest can beep me through the front door, and then maybe I can just drop off my backpack, leave it there somewhere safe, and go get a cup of coffee. So I'm talking to this guy. He spoke very little English, just a little bit, and I'm chatting with him. And it seemed like he was going to let me into the building, but it also seemed like he wasn't. I couldn't quite figure out what he was saying or what he was asking me. It was very confusing. But by the time the dust settled, I learned that he worked there. He's the guy in charge of the place. And then things got quite interesting. Like I said, I couldn't understand anything that he was saying for the longest time. But then he said something about, do you want to leave your backpack? It was too early to check in. I couldn't check in. But he said, "Do you want to leave your backpack?" I was like, "Yes, absolutely, I do. Can I do that?" So he opened the door. We went in together. And that's when I figured out that he was an employee or the owner or something. I think he told me he was the owner, but I think he's just someone who works here maintaining the place. And he went walking down a hallway, stopped at a door, a room door. Again, I was still half thinking he was a guest and he was staying in room 5. And I thought he's just going to open the door to room 5, his room, and let me leave my backpack inside his room while I go out for coffee. But suddenly, out of nowhere, he had a key in his hand, and he handed me the key. So, here's the key to room 5. And no, he didn't hand it to me right away. He opened the door, swung the door open, and handed me the key and said, "There's your room." And it turns out that right beside the door, there's a small lockbox with a combination code on it, like a combination lock where you spin the dials. And he had the code to that lockbox. So he put in the code, opened it up, and the key was inside. And then he took out the key, gave it to me, and closed the lockbox. So that was my room. Room 5 was my room. And he said, "Go in and put your backpack there." So I put my backpack on the bed. But now I'm standing there with not only the key, but I also have the fob that opens the front door. So I'm starting to think, I'm already checked in. It was clear that he was letting me drop off my backpack, but it was equally clear that he now expected me to leave. He was kicking me out of the building. And I was wondering, well, is there some wiggle room here? We've gone this far. I've gone into my room. I've dropped off my luggage. I'm standing there with the key to the room. Can we not just assume that I now have arrived at my hotel? Isn't there some wiggle room here? But apparently there wasn't. And he says, "Oh, now you've got to go out, out. And then we get back to the lobby of the building, because there was a hotel lobby there. It just wasn't functional. They just pulled down the steel shutters. And the whole outside area, the lobby and the hallways, none of that is air conditioned, because that's all considered unusable space. They don't need it for guests. So there is no air conditioning. It's very, very hot and stuffy out there, very dark too. There's no lights, anything like that. Everything inside the room is operational, but out there in the lobby, that's all just dead air, dead space. So we're standing in the lobby. I'm ready to go outside, but what I wanted to know, what I wanted to confirm was this fob. He didn't explain to me what it was, but I assumed, well, doesn't this beep open the main door to the hotel? Can't I use this to go in and out? because I'm still thinking about the code. I have to wait until 2:30 or 3 o'clock before they send me a message containing the code. But the code was irrelevant, wasn't it? Because I had the fob, and I wasn't sure whether the fob needed to be activated or something like that. And he confirmed, no, that opens the door. Because he kept telling me, and now, sir, you have to wait until we send you the message. And once you have the message, you will have the code. Then you can enter the code and you can come in. And I was a bit confused because I'm holding the fob. And I thought, well, do I really need the code anymore because I have the fob, right? Doesn't this open the door? And he says, yes, that does open the door. And again, I was hoping for a little bit of wiggle room. I thought he would realize, oh, this guy can just go in and out anytime he wants. So what's the point of kicking him out? We're basically on the honor system at this point. He was kicking me out, and he was assuming I would wait until 3 o'clock before I come back. And he said to me that, yes, you have to leave now because the owners, I don't know if he said owners, but he pointed around us, and I guess he was pointing at security cameras. And he said, if they see you in here, they will be upset because you will be using electricity that you haven't paid for. Technically, you can only use hotel electricity starting at 3 o'clock. That's why they have a 3 o'clock check-in, to minimize the electricity bill and the water bill. Because as soon as a guest checks in, the first thing they're doing is turning on the air conditioner. And if they allow guests to check in early, they're using electricity that is not accounted for, that you have not paid for. And that's why he was kicking me out, because he would get in trouble if he allowed me to stay, use electricity, and if his employers saw me in the security cameras, he would get in trouble. So he's like, no, you gotta go, dude. So I finally had it all figured out. And I went out, and I'm just hanging out in Port Dixon, drinking my coffee and doing my thing. And I'm waiting until 3 o'clock, wondering what would happen next. And to my surprise, I'm always expecting the worst, to be honest. I did get a message. And it came via WhatsApp, which surprised me. I thought I would get an email. In fact, I haven't checked to see. Maybe I also got an email from them. Let me check. No, I don't see an email from them. So that's kind of surprising. Makes me wonder, do they have to connect via WhatsApp with every guest? The only reason we were communicating on WhatsApp is I track them down to ask them all my questions, but not all guests would do that. So anyway, that's another mystery. But I did get a very detailed WhatsApp message, and it contained the code, and it contained a bunch of other information, mainly about all the things I can't do and all the things that they're going to charge me if I do those things. It's the usual hostile hotel messages. I always wonder why they bombard you with these negative, confrontational messages when they never really balance them out with positives afterwards. I get the impulse, but for example, they have signs here as well that say, if you soil the carpet, you have to pay 50 ringgit. So if I leave a muddy footprint or some sort of stain on the carpet, they're going to charge me 50 ringgit. And they say that in the message. Smoking is 100 ringgit fine. This is a so many ringgit fine, etc., etc. You can't do this. You can't do this. Please, you can't make noise. You can't do all these things. That's the tone most hotels choose as the tone of their communication. And I always wonder if they can somehow make all of that a little bit more positive and perhaps wind things up with a happier message at the end, but they never do. Anyway, I did get the message, and it had photographs, and it explained the procedure, saying, this is our front door, this is our code box, So enter the code into this keypad. That will open the door. Then go to room 5. It told me my room number and said, then you will find a box, a lock box with a combination code. Use this code to open that box. That will get you your key. And then when you have the key, you can open the door and you can use the fob to go in and out. I have to say, I didn't really like the layout of the messages. I thought it could be improved a lot. It was confusing and didn't really describe it in a way that made sense to me. It was like a puzzle that you had to figure out. And once you know, oh, code at the door, second code for the lockbox, and the key is inside the lockbox. Oh, okay, now it's all starting to make sense. But until you see these things for yourself, even the photographs didn't really help. You have to sit down and examine it and read it through step by step. It's like, what? It's like, oh, really? And when you finally get to the hotel, it's like, now I understand. Maybe I'm just a dummy. Anyway, a funny thing is, even though I had the fob, I could just scan it and it would automatically pop the door open. I wanted to use the code. For me, that would be fun. They send me the code. I want to have the experience of inputting the code to see how it works and make sure that it does open the door. For all I know, I might lose the fob, or the fob won't work, and maybe the code is going to be important. In any event, I wanted to try the code. That's the weird thing about me. The average person, I suppose, would come to Port Dickson for pleasure. They want to stay at the hotel with the swimming pool, and they would be lounging beside the swimming pool, renting a jet ski, taking a ride on a banana boat, being pulled by a jet ski. You do all these fun things. None of those things are fun for me. My entertainment is exactly what I'm talking about. Exploring little systems and procedures. I get more pleasure out of that than sitting on a banana boat, for example. So to me, I really wanted, if I'm going to have to do a self-check-in procedure at my new hotel, I want to do all the steps, and I really want to see how it works, and I enjoy that sort of thing. So when I got back to Marvel around 3 to do my official check-in, I wanted to punch in the code, but just as I was arriving at the door, another person showed up who appeared to be a guest, and they were going to punch their code into the door, and they were just a little bit ahead of me. But I didn't want to freak this person out. It was a woman, and I didn't want to freak her out. So I didn't want to stand behind her, hovering over her and waiting for her to finish. So now, basically, I mean, I could have just gone in with her. She opens the door. Oh, thank you very much. Yes, I'm staying, and I could just go in. But I wanted to put in my own code. So what I needed to do was hang back for a while until she was finished. But I needed to hang back in a while that didn't frighten this poor woman. She wouldn't want to see some strange man lurking behind the pillar, out of sight and waiting to see when she finishes opening the door. So I'm walking up and down the street. I'm like a silly James Bond villain or something. I've got my phone out and I'm looking around. The world's worst actor, taking pictures, pretending I'm a tourist. All the time, I'm just waiting for her to finish getting in to the hotel, and she took forever to do it. It was kind of ridiculous. But anyway, she finally got the door open, then she went in, and it's like, finally, now my turn. So I could stop the charade, and I went up to the door and had the message open and got the code, and boop, 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 boop. And it didn't work. But of course you have to go hashtag, and it was in the message. You have to press the number sign after the number, and that's common for these keypads. But it's been so long since I've done any kind of a keypad thing, I'd forgotten about that. So I figured that out, put in the number, hit the keypad, boop, and the door opened. So now I was able to go in And after that, everything was kind of smooth sailing because I already had the key. I didn't have to do the lockbox procedure and enter the combination, but I now knew how to do that. I came into the room, and then I explored the room, figured out all the electrical outlets and how to turn on the air conditioner. That's always something where you get your remote and you're hitting the power button. Nothing's happening, nothing's happening, and eventually you realize, okay, there's some kind of a switch or a fuse box you have to deal with. And in this case, there's a big switch on the wall that runs the power to the air conditioner. So you have to hit that switch first, and then the air conditioner will turn on. You figure all that stuff out. I'll talk about the room in a minute. And then there were other things I needed to do, self-check-in procedure. In all the messages, it said, after you have finished checking in, getting into your room, please send us a picture of your ID. If you're Malaysian, you'd have to take a photograph of your Malaysian ID card. For a foreigner, you take a picture of your passport and you send it to them. Again, I was doing it via WhatsApp. So I did that, and then I was typing out a message to the customer service rep because there was no Wi-Fi anywhere, no Wi-Fi password. In the message that they sent me, gave me all the information, codes, more codes, how to do this, how to do that, all the rules, all the procedures, but no Wi-Fi password. I was like, oh, for Pete's sake. And I'm looking around the room because I have in the past just overlooked it. I've asked people, can you tell me what the Wi-Fi password is? And it turns out it's posted on the wall, posted on the door, or it's quite often on the key. There's like a key ring thing with a label on it, and it might have the Wi-Fi password on it. But I looked everywhere. I checked everything I could think of. No Wi-Fi. I went out to the lobby. I looked all around the front desk, the front door, because I really wanted to make sure that there was no Wi-Fi. I don't want to look like a dummy. But I couldn't find the Wi-Fi password anywhere. So just as I sent them a copy of my passport, I then sent the message saying, oh, by the way, hate to bother you again. However, could you tell me what the Wi-Fi password is? And the second I sent them that message, I got an automated reply containing the Wi-Fi password. Apparently, they hold that back as kind of a reward for you sending in your ID. So as soon as they got the message with my passport photo, then they sent me the final message, which gave me the last information I needed, which included the Wi-Fi password. So then I had to send another message apologizing. Whoops, sorry about that. The Wi-Fi question, you already sent it to me. Thank you very much. And the Wi-Fi password worked, so no issues there. The Wi-Fi strength seems fine, so no issues there. But then we got into another gray area, because throughout this entire procedure, it occurred to me that nobody had asked me for the Malaysian tourism tax. And this tourism tax dominates my life in Malaysia whenever I'm dealing with a hotel. And yet here, I've been sending messages back and forth, back and forth. We've been communicating with these people for a long time, and nobody ever mentioned the tourism tax. And it occurred to me that for a self-check-in procedure, there's nobody to give the money to. So how in the world are they going to get the tourism tax from me or from any guest, right? So I asked the woman. Normally, perhaps I wouldn't have brought it up, but in this case, I'd already paid it because I booked the room through ANGOLA. And one of the reasons I chose ANGOLA was it had the cheapest room rate, but ANGOLA also works well for me, and ANGOLA automatically includes the tourism tax in your online payment. So it's already taken care of. That's why I used ANGOLA. So I had already paid the tourism tax. So I didn't mind reminding her about it. The customer service rep perhaps if I didn't say anything, I can get away without paying, right? But since I had already paid, it made no difference if I reminded her. So I did send her a message, by the way, what do you charge the tourism tax? Because I'd also read that Airbnb properties can use a loophole where they are not considered hotels under the tax law, and they don't have to charge the tourism tax. Hotels do, but Airbnb is kind of in a gray area, and since they were self-check-in and they qualified, I guess, as Airbnb, maybe they don't need to charge the tax. And I was just, with my interest in systems and procedures, I wanted to know, how does this work? So I asked her, and she says, no, we do not charge the tourism tax. Foreign guests, you are not required to pay the tourism tax when you stay at Marvel. So of course that begs the question, and it is what I mentioned to her, well, if you book through Agoda, they charge the tourism tax. It's automatic. And she says, we know about that. There's nothing we can do about it. If you pay through Agoda or through Booking.com, you end up paying the tourism tax, even though you don't need to. So here I am, finally staying at a place in Malaysia where the tourism tax is not an issue and I don't have to pay it, but the online booking system is out of my control and they charge you the tourism tax anyway, even though legally you're not even required to pay it. So yeah, the tourism tax, it's the gift that keeps on giving. More and more problems with that. And this made me think, well, maybe there's an online booking portal that doesn't charge the tax. Traveloka, for example, in my experience, does not charge the tourism tax. So I thought, if I stay here longer and I want to rebook the room or book it again in the future, I'll do it through Traveloka, and then I can get it. I don't end up paying the tourism tax for no reason. But of course, Marvel, this operation, is not listed on Traveloka, or at least I couldn't find it. It's listed on Agoda, listed on Booking, and both of those now charge the tourism tax automatically. Booking is pretty sneaky about it because they add it at the very end. You go through the law. I did this as a test just to see it for myself. And you go through all the stages of booking the room. And as I've talked about before, every time you click next or continue to go to the next screen, the price of the room goes up because they keep adding more taxes and more fees. And you finally get to the final room price. This is the price of the room. This is the final price of the room. And they keep emphasizing final price of the room. This is the room rate. This is room. And you say, okay, looks like an okay price. You click, go to the payment stage, but now your payment has gone up by 30 ringgit because you're staying for 3 nights and they charge you 10 ringgit per night. And now they add that to the room rate. And now it's a much higher price that you're paying because they've added the tourism tax. But they don't add the tourism tax until the final payment window. They keep it hidden until then, so you just aren't aware of it. But Booking does it, Agoda does it, Traveloka doesn't. I assume it will in the future. This seems to be a procedure that slowly but surely whoever's in charge of the tourism tax is making sure all the online booking systems charge it in advance. So now they take the burden away from the hotels, making it more automated, which makes sense. But Traveloka isn't on that system yet, but Marvel, I can't find it on Traveloka. And maybe I might, if I stay here longer, I might look for another way to do it. Though my customer service rep did say, if you don't want to pay the tourism tax, you can just pay us in person at the desk. And of course, by then I'm done communicating. We've sent so many messages back and forth. 50% of them coming back my way, I don't understand them, or they don't make sense, or they're incomplete. So it's not a terribly efficient discussion. And now she's telling me I can just pay at the desk. And I was going to write back, what desk? It's self-check-in. There is no desk. There's no receptionist. There's no lobby. How in the world? And I'm pretty sure that if I said, oh, I'd like to do that, please, the price they pay, the price they charge for a walk-in, the walk-in rate will be 50% higher than the online booking rate anyway. So you'll end up paying more than you would, even including the tourism tax. So that's probably a dead end anyway. But as I said, she told me I could just pay at the front desk. Like, do you know what hotel you're working at? The whole point here, the main thing that's dominating my entire experience at your hotel is the fact that you don't have a front desk. That's your defining feature. But I thought, okay, let's just let it go at this point. You're never going to understand everything. There's no way that Planet Doug will ever come to a perfect understanding with planet Earth. We're always going to be at odds. So I let it go at that point. So that is the story of checking in. The room, well, the room is a bit of a mixed bag. Going from the seafront to here is definitely a major step down. Oddly enough, the facilities here are newer. So the air conditioner, the sink and the mirror and the shower, all of these things are newer. I think this is a very new operation. There's even a kettle in this room, an electric kettle that works and is relatively new. So from that point of view, it's much better condition than the seafront, but it's small, a very small room. This is a double. Again, there were no single rooms, which always annoys me. I'm discriminated against as a single person staying in hotels because I'm forced to pay for two people, whether I want to or not. I find that unfair. I think I'm going to bring a class action lawsuit against the hospitality industry worldwide on behalf of all single people, because we are discriminated against. We're a minority in that regard, because there are very, very rarely are there services designed for one person. The world assumes you're part of a couple. So anyway, this is a two-person room, but really, in terms of comfort level, it's one person. It's small enough that I'm struggling to get comfortable in here. There's no room on either side of the bed. This is the shower right here, right beside me. This is the wall right here. So you can't get out of bed on the sides. You have to butt scoot to the end of the bed before you can even get out of bed. And if you had two people in here, you'd be running into each other. There's no room for your luggage if you had luggage. Your stuff would just be dumped all over the floor. Your suitcases would cover the entire floor and you wouldn't be able to walk anywhere. There's no closet space, there's no shelf, there's no desk, there's no chairs. It's just bed, shower cabinet, and door, and not much else. So I think anyone who came here as part of a couple wouldn't come back here as a couple, because it's just not a comfortable room for two people. If you had children, no chance. This is not a family place. And I think if you were, well, another reason it's not good for a couple is that here's the bathroom right here, thin plastic kind of wall. So you hear everything in this room. If you're a little bit shy and you want to go into the bathroom and you need to do your thing in there, you're not hiding anything going on from your partner out here. And there's no wall. The wall, it's sort of a barrier, but it doesn't reach the ceiling. So in fact, there's a two and a half foot gap all the way around this toilet shower stall. So it's not sealed off. The bathroom toilet is pretty much part of this room as well. So yeah, they're basically, you're using a bathroom right out in the open almost. So it's not very good for two people. And I was reading the comments, someone made this comment that it would not be suitable for elderly because to get up to the bathroom, you have to step up like 1.5 feet. There's a step. The way, because of the plumbing, I guess, I think this place was never designed as a hotel. It was an empty space, and then they chopped it up and put in a bunch of hotel rooms. So in order to add the plumbing, they had to create an artificial floor so that they could raise the toilet and all the pipes above the ground. So they had to build a cement floor so all the plumbing can be below it. So in order to go into the bathroom, you're stepping up a tall step. And because the door, there's sort of a sliding little doorway that goes into this toilet stall. It's quite narrow, and the spaces are so narrow that even if you're in good physical condition, which I more or less am, stepping in and out of that toilet thing is not easy. And if you're here and now I want to go into the bathroom, it's a real physical effort to get out of this bed, butt scoot to the end and get up and then somehow step up into there and then step down again. Particularly stepping down, an elderly person, I don't think they'd be able to do it. They would end up falling over. It's too big a step over there, and there isn't enough space. You're going to get confused and you're going to fall over, so not good for that. The room is good for a single person like me, except they charge too much. I do find that hotels in Malaysia are like that the prices don't vary that much. So when you move into a hotel that has cheaper or lower level facilities, you're assuming the price will drop accordingly, but it doesn't. The price stays up there, no matter how good or bad the conditions are. So you can't really track down a super low budget place, because even if the conditions are super low budget, the price does not match. It just stays at the same level. So this place costs the same as any other hotel that would have a bigger room and a better bathroom, like the seafront, for example. It's roughly the same cost as the seafront. So you're not saving any money by moving into a place like this. Sticking with the overall theme of Planet Doug versus Planet Earth, I have a few other things that have happened over the last couple of days that I thought were kind of amusing. Or not amusing all the time. The first one, I got another scam email that made me think a little bit. As I mentioned, I get tons of scam emails all the time. Most of them are pathetic. They don't look real. They have nothing to do with me or my life. And a lot of them get pulled into spam folders and things like that. But I got one just as I was packing up and leaving from the seafront, which I found very annoying, because these things do seem to happen at the worst possible time. I was just shouldering my backpack to leave the room when I got this email. And to deal with something like this, you need time and space and Wi-Fi. If there really was a problem, I would need to sit down with my laptop and my phones and go online and try and fix this problem that the email was telling me about. And yet I've got to check out of the room because it's checkout time. And so anyway, it was the worst possible time to get this message. I saw the email and it said, it was from Lazada, Thailand, and it said, someone has just logged in to your Lazada Thailand account using an unrecognized device. If this was you, ignore this email, everything's fine. But if you did not do this, please da 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 da. So it looked real. There was a lot of Thai writing. It had all the Lazada logos and imagery and things like that, and the language was consistent with similar, because I'm constantly being told that I'm logging in from an unrecognized device, and this drives me crazy. Almost everything I use, as soon as I move to a new city or a new hotel, a new country, and then now I log into something on my phone. I'm not logging in, I'm just calling up the app for something, and then I'll set off all of these messages. Oh, we don't recognize this device. It says, well, yeah, you do recognize it. You just don't recognize it anymore because you're stupid. And I move to a new country. And I get all these emails saying login has just occurred from an unrecognized device. Was this you? Would you like to register this new device? And I have to do it for like the 1,000th time. So I'm very familiar with these emails, and this one was consistent with those. And it didn't seem unreasonable that this could happen, because I don't really trust Lazada, like the security procedures. I thought someone could have somehow hacked into Lazada, gotten login information, and now somebody is on Lazada in Thailand happily ordering $10,000 worth of laptops and tablets on Lazada and having them shipped to their home on my bill, on my account. So I thought, yeah, I better look into this. But then reading the email closely, there were problems, little things. It looked real, it seemed consistent, but I eventually concluded, no, this is not real, this is a scam. For one thing, the opening just said, hi, comma, and then it launched into the problem. So they didn't mention my name or my username or account information. I'm pretty sure normally if you get an email from Lazada, it would be addressed to you, whatever your Lazada username is, dear, and then tell you. This just said hi, comma. So it's like, okay. And then what I normally do in these situations, obviously I don't click on any links in any email ever. I just went to my Lazada app on my phone, and I launched Lazada app, and I went into my account looking for any kind of issue, any kind of a problem, and I didn't see anything. Though I do find Lazada confusing, because there's Lazada Thailand and Lazada Malaysia. So when I launch the app on my phone, because I have the Lazada app, I launch it, I end up looking at Lazada Malaysia. All the language is in Malay, and all the information is related to being in Malaysia. So I'm thinking, okay, the message came from Lazada Thailand. Is Lazada Thailand different from Lazada Malaysia? Are there two different apps? Is it the same account? Or I've never really understood how that works. So I went into my password manager, because in my password manager, I do have two separate listings, one for Lazada Thailand, one for Lazada Malaysia. So they look like two different websites. So I launched Lazada Thailand from my password manager, and it opened up Lazada, but it turned out it was Lazada Malaysia. It opened up that app again. So no matter how, I couldn't really get into a separate Lazada Thailand app, so I concluded that, okay, they're the same thing. And I eventually concluded that there was no problem. This was another scam email. And something that bothers me is that it seems like it's a basic security flaw on the internet. I've never quite understood this, because whenever you open an account, for example, when I opened my Lazada account, it asked for my email address. It's based on my email address, right? And that becomes my username. So when you open up Lazada and it asks for username, you put in your email address. So everybody in the universe, they know what my Lazada username is. Everybody knows what it is, because it's the same as my email address. If I give someone my email address, they can write a fake email from Lazada and address it to me at my email address, because that's my username. So every account that I have, every app that I use, my username is often identical to my email address. And isn't that a huge flaw on the internet? I don't know why it works that way. Feels like this is a problem, but I don't hear anybody ever talking about this. You can find millions, it seems, millions of articles online telling you the top 10 ways to keep yourself secure on the internet, and they talk about two-step verification and on and on and on, all the things you need to do to keep your account secure. But in all these articles, no one ever mentions this basic flaw that your username is the same as your email address most of the time. Shouldn't that be changed? Shouldn't every website in the world, every shopping, every like Amazon, everybody, they should somehow come up with a system where your email address is hidden and you create a unique username for that website that only you know. Maybe you can do that for Lazada, but when you sign up, it definitely asks for your email address. That's the only thing you can put into your username window. Maybe after you open your account, you can change it. Anyway, someone will have to explain that to me because I don't understand it. Another issue I have connected with this is that quite often on the internet, when you are given a list of options to choose from, my option is never on the list. And this always confuses me. It's been confusing me for years. So in this case, for example, I thought, why not? I'm a good citizen. I will report the scam email to Lazada or to the authorities in general. I wasn't quite sure who I could report it to, but I thought, can't hurt. Again, I like to understand how things work, so I would enjoy just going through the procedure. And so I went to something, I think I was on Lazada, and I was going to report a problem with this email and tell them that this is a scam email that I've received. Someone is pretending to be Lazada. And then you get a drop-down list. Oh, you're reporting a concern about this email. Tell us what the problem is. And then it says at the top, I think I made a list of some of the options that they give me. It'll say, okay, is it hate speech? Like, well, no. Next option, is it child exploitation? No. Is it a terror-related threat? No. And you go through the whole list, and I'm looking for what is by far the most common email you get, a scam email. Because it did say spam. Is this spam? I'm like, well, no, it's not spam. It is a scam. It is someone trying to steal my identity and rip me off. And yet, even though that is the most common email you get in life, that's the one option that is not on the list. Like, is this email child exploitation? No. Is it this? No. Is it this? No. The one that I want is the one that is not on the list. And that confuses me as well about the Earth, planet Earth. I've never understood how that happens every single time. Of course, no day is complete on Planet Doug without some problems with YouTube, and I have two to talk about in general. One I've been talking about a lot, and that is how in comments, for whatever reason, months ago, I don't know exactly when it started happening, YouTube usernames in the comments changed from their actual username to some bizarre YouTube ID number. So when I go into YouTube Studio app and I'm replying to comments, or even on YouTube itself, I don't know who anybody is anymore. Over the years, I've gotten to know certain people on YouTube, people who have watched my videos in the past from time to time, and they might leave a comment, and I recognize their names. But now I don't know who anybody is anymore, because their names aren't there anymore. They're just shown with these weird, complex serial numbers. And I don't know why that is happening. And it puzzles me that nobody is talking about it. I seem to be the only one who has even noticed this. And a new wrinkle came into it because I noticed by accident the other day, I went to YouTube Studio, and I noticed this on my laptop actually. There's a section, a little window, when you go to your dashboard. The dashboard lists all kinds of information in different windows, and there's one window that says latest comments, and it will give you maybe 4 comments listed. These are the latest ones on your YouTube channel. And in that window, latest comments, those comments have the original, the real YouTube usernames. They actually say things like John Smith, Jill, you know, it has their, whatever name they chose on YouTube, it shows their names inside the latest comments window. But everywhere else, every other window and on main YouTube itself, it uses the serial numbers. So the YouTube computer system is aware that it should be using these YouTube usernames, the official usernames, because it shows it inside latest comments. But then if you go to a single YouTube video where you can click on show me comments on that video, when it shows you the comment there, it'll show you the exact same comment, but now it has the weird serial number ID. And then when you go to that same comment in the latest comment window, the exact same comment in 2 different places, but in this one it uses the actual YouTube username. In this one it doesn't. It uses that weird ID number. So there's a major problem deep in the YouTube system, and it's been there for months, if not years. It feels like I've noticed it at least a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, months and months and months ago at a minimum. But nobody's talking about it. Nobody has noticed it. Nobody seems to care about it. But it causes a big problem for me, because every time I'm replying to a comment on YouTube, I have to go to the extra step of right-clicking on their ID serial number, open up their YouTube channel, and then when I open up their YouTube channel, oh, then I can see their YouTube name. Oh, that's who that is. Oh, okay. And then I can go back and reply to the comment. I go to the next comment, I don't know who it is, I have to click on it, open up their YouTube channel, then I can see their YouTube username. Oh, okay. And then I have to do that for every single comment. And am I the only person that is dealing with this problem? Because even other YouTubers that I talk to, nobody's ranting and raving about this. It seems like nobody else has even noticed. I'm the only one. So yeah, it's another YouTube problem. In my last random thought or a pet peeve, Planet Doug versus Planet Earth topic is also YouTube related, but it's more about YouTubers themselves and even YouTube viewers. There seems to be a lack of critical thinking for a lot of people. And I say this because of one particular video I watched the other day, showed up in my feed. Some guy from Europe, I think he's from Switzerland or somewhere, speaks English perfectly well. He may even have been British or something. I don't know where he's from. But he had been to Malaysia as a tourist, and he posted a video called something like the top 10 things you should know before going to Malaysia. So he went to Malaysia, had the experience, and now he's providing 10 tips things you should know if you want to go to Malaysia. And one of his biggest ones was, you need to get a visa. Tip number one, make sure you get a tourist visa for Malaysia, because you will need one at the border. And in the video, he even has a screenshot of a official Malaysian government immigration application form that's applying for a multiple entry tourist visa or something. But this is 1000% wrong. It's the most basic mistake there is. You don't need a visa for Malaysia. Malaysia will give most people, not all, but nationals of most countries around the world do not need a visa to go to Malaysia. When you arrive at the border, whether at the airport or land border or boat dock, and you go up to the immigration window, they will ask you the normal questions. And if they decide to allow you into the country, they stamp your passport right on the spot, and you get a 90-day, what they call here, social visit pass. Functionally, it does the same thing as a visa. It allows you to be in Malaysia for 90 days as a tourist, but it's not a visa, and you don't need to get it in advance. This is something you just get at the border. There's a list of maybe 20 countries around the world that do need a visa, but these would be countries that pose some sort of a problem. North Korea, very far-flung, unusual countries that for whatever reason, citizens of those countries do need a visa. But if you're from Europe, North America, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, South Korea, just pick a country, any country that is not some small, weird country, you don't need a visa. And here we have this guy putting himself across as an expert saying, if you go to Malaysia, make sure you get a visa. And he's completely wrong about that. And when talking about coming into Malaysia, he used as his graphic a photograph of some kind of a border crossing with a big gate with locks on it and two soldiers standing there. Imposing looking soldiers standing there with assault rifles on the ready. And he's talking about how you need a visa to get into Malaysia, and it's very important you get a visa, and he's got these soldiers standing there, and it makes it look like Malaysia is some very dangerous place that is not secure, because you have to go past all these armed soldiers in order to enter the country. And again, I'm thinking, what the heck is that? Anybody that goes to Malaysia, probably you're flying into the international airport in Penang or the international airport in Kuala Lumpur, and it is just like any other modern airport in the world where you go through immigration and customs and do all these things and change your money and get in a taxi. So for him to show this photograph of soldiers that you have to get past to get through this gate, barbed wire defenses and things like that, what's the point of that? It was also completely wrong, certainly completely misleading. And then he said, and you must make sure you get an eSIM before you arrive. And then he talks about eSIMs. And again, that is also 100% wrong. Maybe an eSIM is better, and you can get an eSIM before you come to Malaysia. I don't know anything about eSIMs, but you don't need to. If you arrive at the airport in Kuala Lumpur, the first thing you see when you come off the plane are a bunch of SIM card providers. There's desks everywhere. There's the 3 or 4 major ones in the country. They have a desk right at the airport as you arrive. It's even before you get to immigration. And if you want to get a SIM card, you just walk up to one of those desks. Oh, I'd like a tourist SIM card, please. You hand over your passport and your phone. 60 seconds later, practically, they hand it back to you and you've got a SIM card. It's the easiest thing in the world to do. And yet he was saying in his video, telling people, well, you better get an eSIM before you go to Malaysia. And I'm thinking, no, You don't need to. You can if you want, but you can just land and get a SIM card at the airport. It's as easy as can be. So all these things he was saying were 100% wrong. And he was portraying himself as an expert. Yet, when you go to the comments, everybody was telling this guy how wonderful his video was. Oh, thank you so much. Your video is amazing. I learned so much. Oh, this was great. This is so useful. This is wonderful. I love it. So I'm thinking, what is going on here? Where are all the critical thinkers in the world? This guy making the video, why don't you fact check your own video? You're completely wrong. And then everybody leaving comments. Where are all the people telling him he's wrong about everything? So in my case, I thought, well, maybe I'll tell him. So in fact, on this video, I did leave a comment, and I was very polite, and I said my experience of going to Malaysia is quite different from what you describe here. And then I said, as far as I'm aware, you do not need a visa in advance. You can just show up with your passport and you will get a 90-day entry stamp at immigration. It's automatic. You do not need to get a visa at all. So I told him that, and then I mentioned my concern about the border crossing photo, that you're misrepresenting what it is like to come to Malaysia. And I mentioned the fact that you can get a SIM card easily at the airport. You don't need an eSIM. So I pointed out those three things, and I even gave him the list. I went to a website that lists countries of the world that do need a visa for Malaysia. There's a list of like 20 countries, as I said. And I said, if you are from one of these countries, chances are you do need a visa. And the vast majority of people in the world do not need a visa for Malaysia. And I told him these things. And then he did reply and basically just said, thank you very much for all that great information. No apology for getting everything wrong, no embarrassment about getting everything wrong, and no correction either. He didn't try to change anything in his video. If I put up a video like that and someone pointed out to me that nearly everything I said was wrong, I would fix it. I would delete the video and reshoot it. But he's just going to leave it up, and everybody who watches his video is going to think they need to get a visa for Malaysia. So yeah, it's a weird world sometimes. Where are all the critical thinkers out there? The detail-oriented people. Yeah. Second cup of coffee this morning. Yeah, I just realized I have more Planet Doug versus Planet Earth stories. One is so funny because this is the second time it happened to me. This was my last night at the Seafront Hotel. I was out doing things, going back to the seafront. I was busy organizing and getting packing and moving out and booking this room, things like that. And the rest of the evening was just going to be me going back to the seafront, editing some videos, doing some things, and then going to sleep and waking up fresh in the morning. That was my plan for the evening. Very exciting. But I stopped by a 99 Speed Mart, as I often do, and I bought some milk, as I often do, and I put the milk in my knapsack, as I often do. And then I'm walking back to the seafront, and the skies were a bit cloudy. There was a threat of rain, and I started to feel some rain hitting the backs of my legs. Some sprinkling had started, and I'm looking up at the sky, and I don't see any rain coming down, but I feel all these drips on the back of my legs. I'm wearing shorts, and I could feel drips on the calves of my legs. I'm looking up, where's that rain coming from? It's like, is it actually raining? Where is all that coming from? And of course, what I eventually figured out is that for the second time, the carton of milk that I put in my knapsack was leaking, and my knapsack had filled with milk, and it was now leaking out of the bottom. It had soaked through was falling out, and all this milk was dripping onto the backs of my legs. Right? It's like, oh, for Pete's sake, not again, because this had happened to me before. And then I quickly had to open up my knapsack, and of course the bottom half of my knapsack is just a giant bowl of milk. Everything down there is just sloshing around in the milk, and I have to quickly get everything out. And luckily I had not been out filming, so I didn't have all my camera gear in there. Nothing important really got soaked, but oh, it causes such a problem, because now everything that was soaked in milk I had to take into the bathroom at the seafront and rinse it all off, hang everything up to dry. And then my knapsack as well, of course. I have to empty it of everything, and then turn it inside out, inside the shower, and I'm just trying to clean it and soap it up and trying to get all that milk out, because milk, when it goes sour, can really cause a problem. So when you have leaking milk in your knapsack, you really want to make sure you clean it out thoroughly. And then, of course, I had to hang it up and get it to dry. And it was like the worst possible time for this to happen, because I was in the middle of packing up everything, and my idea was just to have a relaxing evening. And I'd been slowly setting things aside and packing so that I put all my important things, passport and money belt and whatever goes into my knapsack. Everything that I cannot afford to lose was slowly being put into my knapsack for the next day. So I have backpack and knapsack, and my knapsack becomes what I call my survival kit. Everything important is in the knapsack. And then suddenly, luckily, I still had everything out. I put it in a big pile on my desk. I hadn't put it all into the knapsack yet. And so when the milk carton exploded and leaked again, I didn't really destroy anything. But you'd think I would learn, because this happened to me once already when I was staying at the seafront, and I bought a carton of milk at 99 Speed Mart, put it in my knapsack, and it opened up for some reason. I'm assuming a previous customer had popped open the seal to check or something, and then they opened the seal. Oh, okay, it was sealed. Now it's not anymore, and they sort of put the lid back on, so the thing was ready to spill out. But anyway, yeah. Planet Earth. Another issue, a very silly one, has to do with staying in hotels like this, because more and more hotels don't give you individual packets of shampoo and soap. They give you big containers, or they have pump things on the wall. But the thing is, shampoo has disappeared. Like, what was wrong with shampoo? What was the problem with shampoo that it needed to be replaced? Because whenever I step into one of these showers, I have no idea what I'm supposed to use. I've got Sakura shower gel, and I've got Beauty Secret shower cream. So what's going on here? What do I use these things for? What was wrong with shampoo that it needed to be replaced by cream and or gel? And I have no idea what either of these things is for. This morning, I would normally just use my own shampoo because I don't bother with all this stuff. But for whatever reason, I thought, why don't I try and figure out which is which? So I grabbed the shower cream. My idea is that the gel, that sounds like body wash, body gel. This is the soap. If this is the soap, then the cream must be the shampoo. So I decided to put it to the test, and I put some on my hand, and it wouldn't lather at all. It just goes onto my hair, and it feels like I'm rubbing soap into my head. It didn't lather like I would expect shampoo to lather up. So I don't know what this is. So that's the other issue I have with Planet Earth right now, that apparently there was a huge issue, big problem with shampoo, and we had to get rid of it. We can't have shampoo anymore. We can only have gels and creams and washes, body washes and things like that. What was wrong with soap and shampoo? Was this such a terrible thing we had to get rid of both of them? Anyway, this is what I'm dealing with now. I have no idea what any of this means. And the other issue with hotels like this, similar to that, is what was wrong with cotton? When did we suddenly get so upset with cotton that now we get towels like this? And I don't know what this towel is made out of. Something probably comes from the oil industry. I don't know what it is, but it's not absorbent. It doesn't absorb water. And then when you step out of the shower and you're soaking wet and you want to rub yourself down to dry off, this just sticks. It just goes, it sticks to your skin and it won't move. And I can only contrast that with memories of cotton. I mean, cotton, like a good, thick cotton towel feels so nice. Just like, oh man, that feels good. But now these days, of course, I'm staying in budget hotels. I'm not exactly going to get a thick cotton towel. But these things are just so ridiculous. I don't know what they are. And they just kind of, and they just feel so awful against your skin. I don't even know what they're made out of. Doesn't have any kind of a tag on it to tell me what it's made out of. It's stretchy. It's like made out of an elastic band or something. So yeah, oil based. And in this room, as in with many Malaysian hotel rooms, there are no sheets. So there's no sheet on the bed. So that's why I always have, I bring my own sheet everywhere I go because I love a good cotton sheet. Feels good against my skin. And this room only has this weird, well, it's behind me, but it's like a blanket, but it's made out of the same material as this towel. And it's just so nasty against my skin. And it's thick enough that I'm pretty sure they don't wash it in between guests. It's too thick, I think. If they have sheets, you can kind of think, well, maybe after the previous person left this room, they strip the bed, put new sheets on, and they wash the sheets. But with these weird, I don't know what they're made out of. I want to say velour. Feels like velour. Like these weird velour blankets. They're so thick. And I don't think they can wash them every single time. They're just too big. So there's probably, who knows when the last time this thing was washed. And I'm not that worried about that. I'm not super concerned about hygiene and stuff like that. But it's just the feeling against my skin. It just feels awful. Cotton just feels nice, you know? Anyway, I think that is the end of Planet Doug versus Planet Earth. As far as YouTube stories go, I think I only have one to talk about. There's a new video from Itchy Boots, and this one is called I Have to Hide in the Forest of Angola. And yeah, I don't have a lot to say about it because it was a very simple day as far as an Itchy Boots day goes. She's still on her way to the border with Zambia. She started off in the capital city of Angola, Luanda, and it sounds like she's not going to make a big deal out of traveling through Angola. She's just heading to the border mainly down a paved highway, heading to the border with Zambia. And her first day, she did something like 650 kilometers. And I think in her mind, she was thinking, wow, that was such a big day. Thank goodness I don't have to do that again. I got the lion's share of the journey out of the way. But it turns out she woke up this morning without quite realizing it. She started doing her map checking, and it turned out that she was scheduled to do 550 kilometers again. So it was 650 the first day, but this day she's still going to go a long distance, 550 kilometers. So she had that going on, but there weren't any big adventures, things for me to comment on. So the main event that took place is that there was a storm, a thunderstorm, and she was looking for a village to get shelter from the storm So she turned off the main road and went down kind of a dirt path, or probably was a dirt road at the beginning, but then it got narrower and narrower and turned into a dirt path. And she never made it to the village and decided that it's probably not a good idea to keep going. I don't know where this trail is going. And the conditions were getting rougher and rougher. So then she just stopped, turned off her motorcycle, and was sort of crouching down in this forest, waiting for the thunder and the lightning and the storm to pass. So that was her big adventure for the day. But I had my usual reaction to it because the thumbnail said scared, like a big word, white letters, her thumbnail style, scared. And it says, I have to hide in the forest of Angola. And it shows her crouching beside her motorcycle as if she's actually hiding. And I assumed when I saw the thumbnail that she had been attacked, that thieves had chased her. Robbers were trying to find her, and she was trying to escape from men trying to rob her. And then she ended up riding into this forest, and now she's hiding in the forest from all of these criminals. That was my instinct as soon as I saw the thumbnail and scared. Like, whoa, she finally ran into some thieves of some kind. But of course, it turned out she was hiding from a thunderstorm. So I'm not a big fan of clickbait, as I've often talked about. I like things to be straightforward, and I never quite see the need for clickbait, especially for someone like Itchy Boots, who is so popular just based on her personality and her filming style and her openness and the fact that she's telling an adventurous story and her videos are done well. They're 20 minutes long. So she does everything right, and she's going to get 1 million views with or without a thumbnail like that. And I do wonder, though, does she know it's misleading? I have to think she does know that she does it on purpose. She's just being vague on purpose, scared and hiding. And then you, as the viewer, you can just make your own assumption about what it is she's hiding from. And I suppose that's fair game for a headline, for a title. You want to intrigue your viewer. They want to know more. Oh, what is she scared of? What is she hiding from? But of course, the assumption, I think any reasonable human being with this context, the thumbnail, the wording, you would just assume she's hiding from people, bad people, trying to do her harm. That would be the assumption most people would make. But then it turned out it was a storm. And I did notice a lot of people left comments saying that, well, if you're hiding from thunder and lightning, hiding underneath trees, isn't that the absolute worst thing you can do? To be honest, I don't even know if this is true. But you do hear that all the time, that when people give advice about lightning, the one thing you don't want to do is go hide under a tree, because the tree is the tallest thing around, and that's going to be hit by lightning before anything else. So by hiding under a tree, you're actually putting yourself in more danger than if you had stayed out in the open. Whether that really is statistically true or true according to the science, I don't really know. I think it is true, but I don't know for sure. But I think that is the consensus out there in the world, and a lot of people were leaving comments to that effect, saying, well, if you're hiding from the lightning, you probably stopped at the worst possible place you could. And yeah, that was pretty much the whole video. Yeah, I don't remember anything else of note. I commented before that she bought new cameras, the Insta360 Ace Pro. She bought 2 of them, one to mount on her handlebars, one to mount on her motorcycle helmet chin. But she decided she didn't like the one on her chin, and she put the GoPro back. She's still using the GoPro here and the Ace Pro on the handlebars. And she has the Insta360 X3 camera as well. So she does have the X3 camera. She hasn't been using it very much, though. Very little 360 video that I could see. So that is it for Itchy Boots. In the world of pop culture, I have a couple of things I wanted to mention. The best, the most interesting is an animated series I just watched called Iwaju. I don't really know how to pronounce it. It is a Yoruba word from the Yoruba language from Nigeria, and it has a whole bunch of accents on it, an accent on the A and the U, so I'm sure it is said in some unusual way, but just reading it in English, it would be Iwaju, and it is a Walt Disney animation in combination with a Pan-African British-based entertainment company called Kugali Media, and it was written by Olufikayo Adeola and Halima Hudson, and directed by Adeola. And the cool thing about it, two really cool things, it's an animated show, but it is set in Lagos, Nigeria, which is amazing. I love any kind of entertainment that has a new setting, where you have the story and you have the characters, which are both amazing, but now you also have the setting of Nigeria, and that is so cool to see. And the other thing that makes it really interesting is that it is also a kind of science fiction. So it is Lagos, it is Nigeria, but it is a futuristic Nigeria, where we're sometime in the future, where, I mean, the comparison is a little bit cheap, I suppose, but a lot of people in the reviews, they do say this, it's a little bit like a new type of Wakanda, where it's an African society, an African nation, but they're extremely technologically advanced. But it isn't really like Wakanda, because even though they're living in a world of advanced technology, life on the streets and a lot of everything that is going on still looks like traditional, like 20th century or early 21st century Nigeria. So the story has a lot of themes of class and economic disparity. So there is an island, Lagos has an island, and the people who live on the island are the rich and the wealthy, and apparently there's also a mainland, and when you go from the island to the mainland, the people there are much poorer, and they still have access to this advanced technology, but life there is much more traditional. So when you get down at ground level, you're looking at traditional African markets and African lifestyles. Nigerian, in fact. But really wonderful show. Enjoyed it immensely. 6 episodes, very short, 20 minutes each. And my one criticism of the show would be it's just not long enough. I enjoyed it so much. It could have benefited from being 3 times as long and really stretch out the story and do a lot more with it. But of course, we're talking about animation, and animation is so time consuming and so expensive to do that I'm just lucky that we got as much as we did in the 6 episodes. And the one thing I was thinking of as I was watching it is that everything you see has to be created. And I think about that with animation a lot, because if you're filming in the real world, let's say you make a movie set in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, well, you have to get permits to film on the street, of course, and there's some copyright and privacy concerns, whatever. But essentially, when you turn the camera on and the actors are acting, the entire backdrop is just there. All of Malaysia exists, all the buildings and the restaurants and the traffic and the people, the way they dress, the sounds. You basically have everything in that world already exists, and you're just filming it. But now you're creating an animated Lagos. Every little thing you see in the background has been drawn by an animator in some fashion. Everything, every article of clothing, every person, every vehicle, every detail on every house, street, food stall, restaurant, that entire backdrop has been, someone had to make a decision about what to fill that space with. And can you imagine the amount of work that goes into that, the decision making? Incredible to watch. I've only watched it one time, but I'll definitely be watching it a second, probably a third time. And I'm probably the second viewing, I'm going to be doing a lot of pausing just so I can look in the background and see everything that's going on back there. It's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, really, really interesting from so many points of view. Love the characters, love the story, and the way it is set in Nigeria, the way they speak. They're using Yoruba, they're using what they call pidgin, which is a simplified mixture of English and other words, and they're using pure English, all kinds of different languages. Their accents are Nigerian. As far as I can tell, everything about the show is authentic and true to the culture and traditions and life of Nigeria. So it's really amazing to see. It's real, to me, it felt like a privilege to be able to watch it, to get that window on that world. And to be honest, it made me want to go to the airport and just fly to Lagos, because after watching the animation, I went to Google Maps because I wanted to see, oh, I didn't know Lagos had an island. And I wanted to see what island they were talking about. So I went to Google Maps satellite view and just spent like an hour just roaming around Lagos on Google Maps and zooming in on different things and on the bridges and the different neighborhoods. And you can go down to street view and look at things. And it just looked like an amazing city, like any African city, to be honest, any African major city. You could go, just pick one at random. I could spend a year just hanging out and going out walking up and down the streets and just enjoying the life there. So yeah, very cool show. In terms of the plot, I guess I don't want to talk about it that much. I don't want to give anything away. Let me watch the trailer again, and then maybe that will tell me what I can say. I don't want to give anything away that's not in the trailer. I just watched the official trailer, and based on the trailer, to be honest, there really isn't anything that I can say without giving away too much, because I love trailers like this, because one of my many pet peeves include trailers that tell you the entire story of a movie. Normally I don't watch the trailer. If someone tells me about a movie or TV show they think that I will enjoy, I will go to the trailer and then I'll start playing the trailer just to get the barest amount of facts and atmosphere. So within the first 5 or 10 seconds, if it seems like my kind of show, just based on the atmosphere, I stop it, because I don't want to know the plot. I don't want to know anything about the characters or the plot. But I will watch a little bit of the trailer just to get a sense of the mood. It's like, oh yeah, actually that's worth checking out. So I don't watch the trailers because I don't want to know. And this trailer tells you enough to be intrigued. It basically tells you what I've already talked about, that it's set in Nigeria, but it's a futuristic Nigeria, and there is a class divide between a wealthy area and then an area that they call the mainland. You get the idea that this is the haves and the have-nots, and you get the idea that there's something bad happening. There are some bad people and then some good people, and they have to fight against the bad people. And that's pretty much as far as it goes, and they drop a little bit of a hint about one of the main plot devices and one of the main characters, but again, I don't want to say anything about it at all. But yeah, I recommend it highly. Well, it's one of those things where you might as well watch the first episode. It only lasts 20 minutes, and it's not a huge time investment. All 6 episodes together, 20 minutes each, is basically a movie, right? So it's not like telling someone they have to watch Game of Thrones which is going to take over their life for 3 months, right? This is just a very short animated show. But yeah, very well done. Enjoyed that quite a bit. The other show that I can remember watching recently was a movie called Contagion. And it's an older movie. I think it came out in 2011, maybe, something like that. And it's an interesting movie, of course, because it is about a pandemic. And this was all before COVID. And it actually portrayed the world of COVID very accurately. So many things in that movie predicted exactly what was going to happen in the near future to us. So I think when the actual pandemic started to happen, the movie Contagion became very popular. Lots of people were watching it because of that. And yeah, I finally got around to watching it. And the way I got to the movie was kind of interesting, because I was on YouTube, and in my feed it suggested one of those videos where a famous actor breaks down their iconic roles, and this one was on Matt Damon. So basically Matt Damon is sitting in a chair and being interviewed, and he talks about his career, and he breaks down all of the characters that he played and tells small anecdotes from the sets of each of his famous movies. And I enjoy those tremendously. I love them a lot. So I was watching this Matt Damon one, and incidentally I noticed that Matt Damon said, "you know," all the time. Sometimes 3 times in one sentence, like you know, you know, you know, you know, you know. As soon as you start listening for you know, you notice that everybody says it just about. I watched the Matt Damon one, then I watched another one, I believe, from Kurt Russell. He breaks down all of his famous roles. He said you know all the time. And I think Josh Brolin said you know as well, but Matt Damon said it a lot. Anyway, when Matt Damon was talking about his movies, he mentioned Contagion, because he was the star. If there is a star in that movie, he was the star. It was more of an ensemble cast. Lots of famous actors were in Contagion, but Matt Damon had the most central, continuous role, so he was technically the star of the movie. So we talked about Contagion, and that got me interested in it, so I found a copy and I watched Contagion. It was a Steven Soderbergh movie, and I can tell if you know his style, you know what kind of movie you're getting into. It was a little bit like a documentary, following a lot of different threads, a lot of different characters, and weaving them in and out. But what's so fascinating about it is how accurately it showed the future, exactly what was going to happen in a few years' time. It was almost scary. The movie began, and I noticed all these close-up shots. You're supposed to notice them, but of people touching things. Anytime a character moved through a scene and then they touched something, like me turning on the air conditioner, and then I hold it and push the button, and then the camera follows the remote, and then the person puts it down, and then the camera stays focused on the remote. Or they go through a door and the person holds the door handle, pushes the door open, then the camera stays here just long enough to see the door handle come back. And you're wondering, why are they showing us all these objects? And of course you quickly realize they're talking about the transmission of the virus, people leaving it behind on the objects they touch. And then suddenly we get all of this concern about not touching your face, not touching objects, constantly purifying your hands, social distancing, no more handshakes. All these things that we lived with for years were all predicted in this movie, Contagion. So, I mean, it's not the greatest movie I've ever seen. I wouldn't be running around shaking people by the shoulders and saying, "You gotta watch Contagion, it's so amazing." But no, it's interesting. It's well done, it's professionally shot, it's an interesting story. And I think for a lot of people, though, it might be disturbing we don't want to be reminded of that. In a way, I don't want to be. I lived through it pretty easily in a way. I didn't go out of my way to make my life difficult. I just stayed in one place for the duration of the whole pandemic in Mae Sot in Thailand, where there weren't a lot of effects, but still, I think it has a lingering psychological effect on all of us. I can feel it. It bothers me somehow. I hadn't thought about this, so I don't really have a way to describe it, but it feels like it's something that I'm still experiencing now. And I think we all have this lingering side effect of the pandemic and everything that everything that we lived through. The way it changed life. Just said, Yeah, I could go on because there are so many parallels between Contagion and real life. It's kind of surprising. It feels like it was made after the pandemic. It feels so accurate, so true to life. It's like, are you sure this wasn't filmed after the pandemic? It was really before? It's really strange how accurate it was. I had one big problem with the plot, and this bothers me a lot. And I'll mention it. It's an old movie, not really giving away anything. But of course, there is a lot of discussion of vaccines. Much of the plot is around the search for identifying the virus and then developing a vaccine, just as happened in real life. But the key moment in the show where they had success involved one scientist taking a untested vaccine, an experimental vaccine, and then she injects herself with the vaccine, and then she exposes herself to the virus. And somehow this proves something, and she becomes a hero. Everybody thinks she's this amazing hero. She saved the world by putting her own life at risk, by testing the vaccine, and then because she didn't get sick, suddenly, oh, the vaccine works, and they mass produced it and distributed it to the entire world, which obviously is absolute nonsense. That is not the way vaccines work. One person can't just test it on themselves and then submit that as proof that it works. It's so ridiculous, I'm amazed it ended up in the movie. Clearly, vaccines have to go through long clinical trials of thousands of people. It has to be tested on a whole series of animals first, and then on humans in controlled settings, and the results have to be studied. It's a whole thing. There's no way on earth that a vaccine is going to be mass produced and distributed around the world based on one person trying to be a hero and injecting themselves and then going, oh, I didn't get sick. The vaccine must work. And then that somehow convinces multi-billion-dollar companies to start producing the vaccine en masse. It's so dumb. I'm amazed it ended up in the movie, but I guess movies need a hero, and when they were writing the script, they thought, well, let's make her the hero, and she injects herself. Because we have seen that in movies in other situations, but nothing like a vaccine, I don't think. Anyway, it was a pure fantasy. So that's the one thing I really didn't like in the movie. But other than that, I enjoyed it. That was the movie Contagion, starring Matt Damon. And in the past week, one of the more interesting podcasts that I listened to was another Radiolab. I think it was from Radiolab. Yeah, it was a Radiolab podcast called Cheating Death. And it's a very recent one. And it was all about, let's see, how to approach this topic. The two presenters of the podcast, they started the story with Ingmar Bergman's movie, The Seventh Seal. And this movie is about a man having a challenging death to a game of chess. And if I win the game of chess, then you can't kill me. So basically death showed up for this guy and basically, okay, it's your time. Your life is over. You are now going to die. And then the man challenged death to a game of chess. So that's where the podcast started. And then the main presenter, Lulu, she decided to do her own version of that, where she was going to challenge death. So she went out into the world and interviewed a whole range of scientists and philosophers, any authority in any field that you could think of, and ask them, is it possible to cheat death? And she thought of this as her own chess game with death itself. Maybe people out there are developing a way that we will never die, because you do hear about that all the time in pop culture and in science. Is there a way where we can stop aging, and all these science fiction ways of doing that? So that's what the podcast was about. And I found it quite interesting because the theme interests me, the ideas interest me, but also the science interests me. And we're learning new things all the time in science. So I did find it quite interesting. But overall for me, it's not a new topic. It's something I've thought about quite a bit. So I had some ready-made ways of thinking about it. And one of my ready-made ways of thinking about this topic is that they're asking the wrong question, because the question assumes that there is such a thing as death, that there is life and death, and they are polar opposites. But the way I think of it is that they are essentially the same thing. They are both part of the same process. So it is essentially a process, almost like a program that has a beginning and an end. And if you want to call the beginning life and the ending death, I find that doesn't really make sense. But essentially, one can't exist without the other because they are both part of the same thing. So that's my approach to the topic in general. So the entire idea of defeating death, avoiding death, is completely irrational. It just doesn't make any sense. So you could even say, you could switch the two words. You could say someone who is 35 years old, you could say they've been living for 35 years. But you could just as easily say they've been dying for 35 years, because living and dying are exactly the same thing. It's just different words for the same process. The moment life begins and you start living, you're on a path that is taking you to dying. So essentially, if you live for 65 years, you've been dying for 65 years. The two are exactly the same thing. And that's the way I think of it in my mind. And this whole idea of dying for 65 years, death in general, does not freak me out in the slightest. And things that I've thought about over my lifetime involve ideas like when you go to sleep at night, you've essentially died. You've been dead for 8 hours, because that thing you refer to, if you make a sentence involving I want to do this, I feel like this. Anytime you use I, whatever you're referring to as I, when you go to sleep, it turns off. It's gone. For 8 hours at night, essentially, you are dead. So this whole life-death is not a black and white thing. It's more like a spectrum. And you can take it even further than that. When you're sleeping, you're essentially dead for 8 hours every day. You do not exist for those 8 hours. The I gets switched off and your body is just lying there, breathing, heart pumping, blood circulating, cells busy doing all kinds of things, energy being produced. But that I that you're so worried about living forever and not dying, well, it's already dead. It wasn't existing for those 8 hours anyway. So what are you worried about? And from my point of view, life itself changes all the time. What or who you are, this I that defines you, changes throughout your entire life. So you could say, if you want to live forever, what point would you choose? Because what you are, who you are, changes dramatically during your lifetime or during your death time, if you want to call it that. At the very beginning, you are one cell. It's almost like if you made a deal with the monkey's paw, it could trick you, and you tell the monkey paw what one of your wishes is. I wish to live forever. The monkey paw can grant you your wish, but change you into one cell, the very first cell that you started at. And that is you, but at a different stage, and you could remain as that one cell for all eternity. But that's not really what you meant. And that cell, of course, doubles, becomes 2 cells. That's also you. Then it becomes 4 cells. Then it becomes 8, then 16, then 32, then 64. And now you can eventually get to a point where you were a collection of thousands of cells. That is still I. That is you. That was one step in this process that we're talking about. And you could live forever as that. And then it starts to differentiate into different features of the human body. Cells differentiate and form the kidneys and the liver and the lungs and the heart and the brain. And there's this growth. And then suddenly you are a baby. But that baby is fundamentally different from the I that I am now. It's like, it's not even me at all. It was a different creature altogether. And then that baby becomes a toddler, which is again a completely different life form. And the toddler becomes a teenager, becomes in their 20s, 30s. You are a completely different creature at every single stage. So to even talk about living forever is nonsensical, because life itself is this process, moving from a different creature to another creature altogether. And while I was thinking about this, I was listening to the podcast. This will sound a little bit ridiculous, but it illustrates what I'm talking about here. Imagine a mountain. There's the mountain, and maybe the mountain is in some way self-aware, and it says, I want to live forever. I don't want to die as a mountain. But again, that's completely illogical, because when you think, what is a mountain? It begins as flat land, right? You've got tectonic plates moving towards each other. These massive tectonic plates hit. One goes underneath the other, and then they both start to push upward. And then over the course of hundreds of thousands, millions of years, the mountain gets pushed up and becomes a mountain. And then over more millions of years, erosion, the upward force stops, and it starts to go down, erosion, and eventually the mountain will disappear and become flat land again. It just erodes and vanishes. And that is the cycle of a mountain. And saying that I want to live forever doesn't make any sense, because the mountain is a process. It is not a single thing. And its existence is tied in a way to all the other stages, in a way that you can't really separate them. And then you can think of something like, maybe closer to us, a butterfly. And if a butterfly wants to live forever, again, in what form? Because it starts as an egg, and then it becomes a caterpillar, and then the caterpillar spins a cocoon and is a pupa or chrysalis, and then it emerges as a butterfly. So it has been living through all these different stages of existence. It's basically a process, and you can't really stop it. And in a way, with a butterfly, it's interesting because it begs the question of which life form is the real one. If this creature was going to live forever, which one is the dominant form? And in terms of how long they live, I mean, you would normally think of the butterfly as the creature, and all the others are just growing into a butterfly. But in fact, you could argue the caterpillar is the main animal because it lives the longest. The egg is there for 4 or 5 days, it hatches, you get a caterpillar, and the caterpillar is living for weeks. 4 to 6 to 10 weeks maybe, the caterpillar is out there doing caterpillar things, eating and living, doing what it does, and then goes into the cocoon for a couple of weeks. The butterfly emerges and is dead within 5 to 6 days. So the caterpillar has by far the longest lifespan of all of these forms of that creature. So you could think of the caterpillar as the main animal, and if it was going to live forever, it would live as a caterpillar. In fact, the butterfly is only important for reproduction to make more caterpillars, because as part of its life process, the caterpillar needs to reproduce, and in terms of evolutionary terms, it reproduces more efficiently when it can move farther to find a mate. It actually has to travel to find a mate, so it evolves into this butterfly, and the butterfly can fly, find a mate, and they make more caterpillars. So in fact, the butterfly is really just a mechanism for reproduction to make more caterpillars. So the caterpillar could be the key thing. So you do have to wonder, if someone talks about, I want to live forever and defeat death, it's a very tricky question, because what does that mean? And the question itself doesn't have any meaning. But in terms of the podcast, what I found most interesting was the science, where they were talking to like molecular biologists, and they were pointing out basically what I was saying, but in a different way, that life and death are the same thing. It's the same process, that the process of living is what's killing you. And this is not something I'd ever come across before. So this was a new idea. And the idea is that every cell in the human body, in any creature, the cell is producing energy. It essentially is taking carbohydrates. Everything you eat is being used as fuel, and the cells are burning that fuel to create energy, which supports life. But that burning creates byproducts, and those byproducts damage the cell, and in particular damages the DNA. And over time, the DNA becomes destroyed, and we begin to age. Our body simply falls apart, and it's actually the process of living contains within itself the process of dying. There is a ticking clock there. And they talk about comparing this to a fire, like a normal wood fire. You take some wood and it's burning, oxygen combining with the wood to release energy and flames, but then you get all of this heat and smoke and charcoal and dust, all these byproducts, and that is essentially what's going on inside our cells. The cells are producing energy. There's a fire burning inside our cells, and the byproducts of that creation of energy damages the DNA, and the body does its best to repair this DNA over time. But there's just no way to defeat that, because it's all the same thing, if you see what I mean. The process contains within itself the end of the process. So yeah, I found it an interesting podcast. As I said, it's something I've devoted some thought to in the past, and I even have my own little slogan. I have it written down in notepads. I feel like I should put it on a t-shirt, sort of something to remind myself of. And I often say, don't be surprised when you die, because being surprised when you die is the dumbest thing ever. I get so much of my life is fueled by pop culture, movies and TV shows. When people do things in movies that make no sense to me, it drives me crazy. So for example, when people in movies in their 60s, 70s, 80s, whatever age they are, and then they are suddenly told they have this or that disease and they are dying, they always react with such shock and horror. It's like, what? And I'm always thinking, what did you expect? Like, are you the one person in all, the one creature in all of human history, in all of the history of the universe, that is not going to die? Surely you knew this was coming. You are going to die. You could be a little bit interested in what form it takes. I'm sort of interested in that. I sit around wondering sometimes, what am I going to be told? I think most people die from heart failure, because I feel so sorry for hearts, because they're such hard-working organs. Just, they never ever catch a break, just pumping, 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 24 hours a day, totally selfless. I even have no control over it. I can't make my heart slow down or go faster. I go to sleep at night, I disappear, my heart just pumping, 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 pumping. And eventually it is going to wear out. It just is going to, the poor heart. But I mean, there are so many things in the modern world that we can die of. I would say, don't be surprised when you die, because that's just dumb. If you are so surprised that you are suddenly dying, well, you've been, according to my philosophy, you've been dying for the last 80 years. This is just the part of this process that has been ongoing your entire life. And people in war movies always annoy me as well. Maybe it's the way they write the characters, where you've got a soldier joining the army, going through the training, and at every stage they know they're going to go to battle and they're going to be shooting bullets at other people, and they'll be shooting bullets and bombs back at them, and there's a very good chance they're going to be shot, injured, and probably die. And yet in movies, these tough soldiers who went through basic training, the first time they get shot at, they're like freaking out, like it came as a complete surprise to them. And I'm always wondering as I watch the movie, so what did you think was going to happen? Why are you so surprised to find yourself in a battle? That's where you went. You knew that's where you were going. And I have the same feeling about diseases and death and that sort of thing. So being surprised by death, to me, just betrays you haven't really thought about the issue. You haven't thought it through very much. So it's a very dumb thing to be suddenly shocked at the idea that you are dying, when in fact you've been dying your whole life. And there's an inevitable end to it, right? So anyway, yeah, very interesting podcast. I love the science. They also talked about stem cells. And to be honest, I don't really know a lot about stem cells. Listening to the podcast made me want to investigate that a bit more. And lots of other interesting topics that they touch on in that podcast. So that was called Cheating Death by Radiolab. And that is the end of today's behind the scenes thoughts. I guess I didn't talk about Planet Doug very much, the actual YouTube life YouTube channel. And just this last night, I guess I lost track of it in terms of my scheduling, but last night my video about going to Cape Rachado went live. And for that video, I did something a little bit differently with the editing. I made a 2-minute introduction, a coming up in this video. I had music playing and some graphics and showing some of the highlights of what I did when I went to Cape Rachado. And So that video went live. People seem to like the introduction. All the work that I put into the editing does seem to make the video better, but it is an open question for me about whether it's worth it or not, because the time involved in making an introduction like that, doing relatively fancy video editing, takes a tremendous amount of time, and I don't know whether it's worth it in the end, right? Because there are very popular videos out there that are entertaining to watch that have no editing like that at all. Itchy Boots being a prime example. She doesn't do any kind of fancy introduction. She has coming up in this video and shows a 5-second clip of something in the video, but that's all she does. It's not like a polished 2-minute trailer for the video, because that takes a day, at least a full day to make, if not more, if you make mistakes along the way. So it's a lot of work, takes a lot of time. And in the video itself, I put in a lot more music than I usually do, more montages and this and that, and whether all of that is good or bad, yeah, who knows. But I had fun doing it, really enjoyed doing it. People seem to like it. More people are clicking on it. That doesn't necessarily mean more people are watching it. You have to really look at the analytics. It could be lots of people clicking on it and then many more people just not even bothering to watch it at all. You really don't know. You can't really just go by how many people clicked on the video. So right now, I think it has, this is the next morning. How many views did the video get so far? More than I thought. 2.5 thousand views, and that's in the first 12 to 15 hours. That's very high for Planet Doug. That's by far more than I would normally get. So from that point of view, it's a successful video. So my Cape Horchado video is doing well in terms of views, at least for Planet Doug. And I have a second version of that video. I have the extended cut, which is quite a bit longer and includes a lot of sections where I'm just talking and talking and talking. And I'll be posting that video in 2 or 3 days. Yeah, so that's what's going on Planet Doug. And then I have one more video where I went to the local Port Dickson aquarium, and I did the same thing for that video. I have the extended cut, and then I have the shorter one, but I haven't finished the introduction for the aquarium. So I'm still editing that, and I'm gonna have to finish that before I can post it. So, and that's the end of videos for right now. I don't have any other raw video to work on. So once that's done, I'm free to go out there and have new experiences. We'll see what happens. All right, that's it. Shutting down, and I will see you in the next video.